Jam on toast!
Hey everybody, welcome to the Jam. I'm Cam Ryan. Today the toast is to Disney animation. Now specifically full-length features over the years, because of course everyone knows the first major animation thing was Mickey Mouse driving the steamboat, but more concerned with the movies, like the Disney classics. I was having a conversation down in the comments with my good friend Grace Ventimiglia. Go check her out, she's great. Somehow we were talking about Disney animation styles over the past few years and where did they go bad. And in order to look at that, you really have to look at where they were versus where they are now and kind of how we got there. So in my messed up brain, I decided to go through and look at all of them, which was much more of a task than I thought it would be. I'm breaking down these animation features on the importance that I see fit, not necessarily hitting every single one, and I'm going to add in a few that may not be there, but let's go ahead and get started. So it all starts in 1937 with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This is the Disney animation classic. If there is one, this is it. The animation Snow White doesn't really match up with too many other styles. This is a great one. They definitely had different stylings between Snow White and the Upright People and the Dwarves. In 1940 they brought out Fantasia, which was probably the first color Mickey Mouse thing that really was there, and it was a huge acid trip of a triumph, and bravo to Disney for doing this. Also in 1940 they released Pinocchio, which is fantastic. We get that another kind of weird styling between the adults and the fairy and Pinocchio and the children, which was very interesting to see, and even some anthropomorphic stuff with Jiminy Cricket. The next year centered on animals with Dumbo, the flying elephant. This is a great movie, and while some of its time show in the character choices, I have to agree this is a Disney classic for my child. The following year, 1942, Bambi was released. I forget that Bambi is this old. It's nearly 70 years old now, and wow. 1950, Cinderella was released, and this is a traditional story that I'm so glad Disney touched, because all these other renditions of Cinderella stories happen, and I always want to be able to remember that Disney had their classic version out there, and it was part of my life. In 1951, one of my all-time favorite Disney movies, Alice in Wonderland, was released based on the books by Lewis Carroll. And while they took some liberties where you do, I think they did such a great job, and I'm so glad that I grew up having seen this, and it's one I will force other children to watch. In 1953, Peter Pan was released, and we get to see what will become a huge Disney franchise on its own, Peter Pan and Neverland, and so glad that this is another one of my tops. 2 years later, 1955, Lady and the Tramp was released, and I cannot believe that it's old. I thought it came out in like the 80s. It took them 4 years later to come out with Sleeping Beauty, which I've always kind of had questionable concerns about the story, and I'm actually kind of surprised Disney touched that one, but sure enough. In 1961, someone missed Drawing Dogs, so we did 101 Dalmatians, so they got that out of their system, I'm sure. 1963, The Sword and the Stone, another oldie but a goodie, dealing with King Arthur pulling the sword out of the stone. Another one that I'm glad Disney touched on, so I have that as a reference when I go and watch all these other King Arthur type movies. Jungle Book in 1967, where we have large anthropomorphic animals. In 1970, we had the Aristocats. In 1973, we even saw some more of the same styling that we saw in Jungle Book, using anthropomorphic animals. In 1977, we had the Rescuers, which the animation there reminded me of Sword in the Stone, as far as the people go anyways, and possibly Aristocats as far as the animals go, so we can see that they're definitely merging conceptions. In the same year, we also had Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh concerning the Hundred Acre Woods, and Pooh's always kind of had its own animation style, and good for it. In 1981, The Fox and the Hound was released. Not one I particularly can get behind, but they ended up having a little bit crisper cell animation by this point, and it shows. Jumping forward to 1986, The Great Mouse Detective. The following year, in 1987, they had a fun idea with The Brave Little Toaster. I think the idea was to be able to try to animate inanimate objects and create storylines that way, and I gotta say it's probably a hit or miss movie. 1989, working conditions at Disney must have really been grueling, and business definitely picking up, because we had this nice, clean, crisp cell animation that then finalized with The Little Mermaid. Now, while the quality is undoubtedly better comparatively throughout the years, there were the little things with the phallic symbols everywhere, so apparently working conditions to get that quality were not great at the time. Around this time, Disney also started working with Studio Ghibli and released Kiki's Delivery Service. The following year, in 1999, they released Rescuers Down Under. In 1991 emerged a Storytale classic in Beauty and the Beast. This is definitely where we've started rounding out our style of animation with Disney, and they probably started experimenting with different ways to do cell animation. This is just a good example of clean, crisp cell animation of the 90s that I think of when I think of good Disney animation. The following year, they released a funny adventure story called Aladdin. With Robin Williams on board, the genie definitely made the movie popular because it made it quotable, it made it spreadable, and this is definitely where I think Disney started building up the real franchises. In 1993, they started experimenting with stop motion with a little film called Nightmare Before Christmas. This is one of my all-time favorite movies of anything, and it's such a fantastic job. I'm so glad Disney backed it. The following year, 1994, Disney released Lion King, which goes on to become a Broadway play. So many good things came from this, and it's just a fun, super well animated animal based movie. Also in 1994 they released Aladdin 2 Return of Jafar, and yay, because this is where they started giving us more of what we wanted in these Disney classics, and the sequels are always nice, right? In 1995 they released a Goofy movie. Also in 1995 they released Pocahontas. You can definitely see a difference in animation styling here with the characters, because at this point you've seen nice rounded, crisp things from Beauty and the Beast. You see a lot of the same animation on one style, and then when you look at the Native American side, they use an entirely different palette and angles to represent that side, and it was a beautiful mix of animation. 1995 was also the release of Pixar's Toy Story, which we all know is the start of a slew of movies we're going to talk about here. This is the first real feature where computer animation was the chief delivery method, and you gotta say, even though there are a bunch of walking, talking toys, Pixar nailed it and they did it well. In 1996, they released Aladdin 3, King of Thieves, and I can't understand why. Plus, this was a social experiment where we realized that franchises will die out, even though they were doing very well before the third movie was released. Also in 1996, they released Hunchback of Notre Dame. I remember this being a very different animation style than we're used to seeing, especially for your European type characters. The movie itself was fine, the animation style just didn't strike me. And kind of their mentality of trying to figure out how they can get more money out of the things that were already successful, they released another stop motion animation picture called James and the Giant Peach, which did not do nearly as well because it wasn't Nightmare, but I still really liked it, and I'm such a fan of stop motion in general. By 1997, Disney had been doing such a good job that people have started wondering, like, can we just do what Disney's doing and make it look like a Disney thing and it'll sell just as well? Well, they were right to a degree with Anastasia. Now, from Disney in 1997, we saw Hercules come out. A lot of the same styling I saw from Hunchback of Notre Dame. Now, 1997 was Princess Mononoke. I'm so glad this was a thing, because I really think this is what blew up Studio Ghibli and got everyone to notice them. It's such a fantastic movie. In 1998, for some reason, the Brave Little Toaster goes to Mars. And for Pixar, in the same year, Bug's Life was released. Fantastically done. They took a different route using insects just so they could experiment, I think, and get things right for doing more complicated things and doing people, which obviously you have trouble associating with if they're not done correctly. Now, in the same year, for however that works, DreamWorks did release Ants, which is not a Disney or Pixar thing. It's DreamWorks, but it's also well done, and you've got to wonder how much information got leaked back and forth during the production of these two for them to come out so similar looking and so well, but completely different movies and franchises. 1998 was also the year Mulan was released, and this is such a good movie and such a pro-feminine storyline compared to a lot of Disney stories. I really like it. But the animation style is very jagged and angular, and I think it's because it's an Asian type movie. So to compare to the European stylings that they've done in the past, which obviously are more rounded, they used a lot of angles to signify that. That was also the year that they released Pocahontas 2. I didn't see that one either. 1999, Brave Little Toaster to the Rescue. I'm not sure what they're doing here, because by the time the little Brave Little Toaster went to Mars, demographic who they originally had for the Brave Little Toaster was pretty much grown up in high school and is not going to watch this movie. This is also the same year that Disney had some kind of weird deal with Nickelodeon, apparently, because a studio known as Disney Toon Studios decided to produce Doug's first movie. A big fan of the Nickelodeon franchise when I was growing up. 1999 was also released Tarzan. By this point, you can definitely see that they're using a digital version of cell animation as opposed to the old flip style of drawing. They've definitely cleaned it up. It's even crisper and better than it was in Lion King. To include Pixar, with the release of Toy Story 2 in 1999, they definitely got better. They used the same models, but they may have cleaned them up a little bit. They definitely got the people looking a little better, and they definitely got the scenes looking better too. Most of the first Toy Story was indoors to control how things were happening, and the second one, I think they definitely venture out a little bit more. In 2000, the geniuses over at Fox decided to try their hand again at doing Disney-like animations and came out with Titan AE. This is a wonderful hybrid between digital cell animation and computer-generated animation, and oh my god, what a great movie. And I have to remind myself repeatedly that it's Fox and not Disney, and I think they were counting on that at the time. Especially since that was the year that Disney released The Emperor's New Groove. The animation here reminds me of Hercules, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, but a little bit cleaner and a little bit better quality in general. In 2001, Disney released Atlantis: The Lost Empire. This is the first movie where it is definitely clear that they were using digital cell animation as opposed to the old styles that they used in the 1990s. If you watch the movie and you look at the scenes, especially with the water, you can tell that there's definitely a different element being used there as opposed to the older cell animations like in Little Mermaid. This was also the year that Studio Ghibli released Spirited Away, another fan favorite cult classic of Studio Ghibli. Let's not forget Pixar, who released Monsters, Inc. in 2001. For the reference of how good Pixar was still doing this, Final Fantasy Spirits Within was at least semi-photorealistic, and it released the same year. I'd say they're comparable, they're just doing different things, so the quality is very odd to compare. In 2002, Studio Ghibli followed up with The Cat Returns, and Disney followed up with The Hunchback of Notre Dame 2. They also released Return to Neverland, which I don't know why I haven't seen to this day. To make up for all that atrocity, they also released Lilo and Stitch, that lovable little alien scamp that steals everyone's left shoe. For some reason, Disney also started producing Pokemon movies, starting with Pokemon Forever. Coup de grace of 2002 would be Treasure Planet, though, another hybrid between cell animation and CG, and while I don't think it's quite as good as Titan AE, it's still wonderful, and it's telling a classic story in a Disney style, in a future setting with aliens, and it's great. In 2003, they released Atlantis 2, Milo's Return. They also released The Jungle Book 2, because why not? Pokemon Heroes was also released the same year, along with the Stitch movie. As much as I like Stitch, I don't know if he needed a whole nother movie. Fear Not 2003 was also the year they released Brother Bear, a Native American story about where a hunter turns into a bear and has to deal with it. But all was not lost, for this was the year that Finding Nemo was released, and Pixar's water animation hit the screens, and it was amazing. In 2004, Studio Ghibli released another cult classic, Howl's Moving Castle. This is one you'll hear about all over the place, even if you don't watch anime. 2004 was also the year that Pixar released The Incredibles, and Disney followed up with Mulan 2. Yeah. In 2005, Pokemon Destiny Deoxys was released, which... Still doing Pokemon movies, guys? That's right, because they're popular. Disney Animation actually released their own CG movie called Chicken Little, which is cute and adorable, and everyone should watch it. For some reason, they also picked this year to release Tarzan 2, and I had to sit through that movie enough times where, even though the animation quality looks a lot worse, it's still a decent enough movie that you don't want to blow your brains out after the 20th time. Disney also released through Vanguard Animations Valiant, another CG bird film. While Disney's looks like they didn't feel up to the stop-motion success after the James and the Giant Peach didn't work out, Warner Brothers in 2005 released Corpse Bride, another Tim Burton-y type stop animation film. Another one I always get mixed up and I have to remind myself that it's not Disney. In 2006, while Pixar was releasing Cars, that annoying movie I can't get away from, Disney followed up with the following League of Unnecessary sequels: Brother Bear 2, Fox and the Hound 2, and Leroy and Stitch, which I believe Leroy is Stitch's evil twin, and it looks like Studio Ghibli decided to release Tales of Earthsea at this point. 2007 was a battle of the CG between Disney and Pixar, where Disney released Meet the Robinsons, which is actually a very well done movie, and I think they worked a lot harder, but it still got beat out by Ratatouille by Pixar in the same year. The following year, Studio Ghibli released Ponyo, which is about a goldfish girl, I think. This is all the same year that Disney Toon Studios started releasing Tinkerbell movies, with the first movie, Tinkerbell. 2008 was also the year that Pixar spanked Disney by releasing WALL-E, one of my all-time favorite movies ever. And what Disney put up against it was Bolt. As much as I like that movie, a dog, a cat, and a hamster trying to save the world. In 2009, Disney decided to add another Disney princess to the lineup with The Princess and the Frog. I liked it. It was weird to kind of go back to that sort of thing, but I thought they did a good job for what it was. It's certainly better than Disney Toon Studios and animation Tinkerbell and the Lost Treasure. But there's no way it would have stood up to Pixar's release of the same year, 2009, Up. Another one of my top movies, and if you don't cry in the first 11 minutes. Another movie that I have to remember that is not Disney was released in 2009 called Coraline. This is another stop animation film that's very Burton-esque. While it kind of looks like Corpse Bride and Nightmare, it is apparently unrelated and released by Focus Feature Films, and I really don't know what else they've done animation-wise. In 2010, Studio Ghibli released The Secret World of Enter Ready. I am so upset that I missed this. I really thought I'd seen this when it was first released. Apparently I got mixed up with memories of watching The Littles when I was younger. As a big fan of The Borrowers, I want to watch this movie like now. In the same year, Disney Toon Studios released Tinkerbell and the Great Fairy Rescue, which I don't know what it's about, but it's CG and it's fairies and it's Neverland franchise, so it has to be decent at least, right? But in 2010, Disney Animation also released the CG Tangled about Rapunzel, and I was so surprised that they hadn't done Rapunzel for so long, and I was very happy to see them do it this way. And also in 2010, for whatever reason, Toy Story 3 was released, and while I liked the movie, and it uses the same lovable characters, when do you retire a franchise, for real? Disney learned quick, if you don't do it right, it dies off. Look at Aladdin, but maybe Pixar's doing it right, because they're still a lovable, live-long franchise, and we'll just see where it goes. In 2011, because I'm not being punished enough, Cars 2 was released, and I don't understand the fascination with taking a left turn for that long, but somebody likes it, so good for them. In 2011, Studio Ghibli released From Up on Poppy Hill, and I gotta say, that movie looks so intriguing. 2011 was also the debacle with Romeo and Juliet. Apparently there were some huge discrepancies with Disney not backing their product here, and I, for the life of me, I can't understand why. I know the movie did well enough, but it didn't do as well as it should have because Disney pulled out and apparently took their name off everything. In 2012, we had the release of Brave, the CG feminist version of Brother Bear, apparently. I still like Brave a whole hell of a lot, and it's much better than Brother Bear, but after doing this list, I can see amazing similarities. They're more so than just people turning into bears, more in the family life lessons that you're supposed to learn from each. Also in 2012, Disney's decided to try their hand at stop motion again with Frankenweenie, and what a weird, wonderful movie, and I'm really glad they did. For whatever reason, stop motion and undead stuff go together really well, and this is just another example. Disney Toon Studios also released Tinkerbell and the Secret of Wings. If you haven't guessed, I've seen some of these, but not all of them, and I don't know if I really am happy about that. In the same year, Disney Animation actually put out Wreck-It Ralph, which I'm so happy, and it honestly takes people with money like Disney to get those franchises together to do it right, and I'm so happy they did. This will be one that I will remember and rewatch throughout my days. In the current year, 2013, we had Monsters University released, which I'm not sure why they did it. My impression is that it's a college rap movie of the characters as they grow into the characters that we watch grow into the characters that we love in Monsters, Inc. So, while a sequel is very due, a prequel I think was unnecessary and actually hurt the franchise. This year as well, Disney Toon Studios is supposed to release Planes. It's just cars in the air. Supposedly also this year there's supposed to be a Bug Life 2 that comes out, but it's being very hush-hush about it. If it ever does come out, it's probably going to be delayed until 2015 or so, and honestly, it may be one of those movies that gets made and never hits the shelves. In 2015, sequels that people have been awaiting a long time now. Finding Dory. This is going to be a delightful jump back to the ocean, and I can only imagine that if they're going to do this, they're going to do it right, and that it's going to work. Also, The Incredibles 2, which was, other than the Avengers happening, this is something that should have been planned from the start of The Incredibles, and I'll be very happy to watch it. Supposedly also in the undetermined future, there's going to be a Toy Story 4 released. So everyone who wanted that, I hope you're happy. So that was kind of my breakdown of animation over the years, and going back from the 1930s all the way to the 2013, I'm amazed at animation and how far we've come and everything we've done, and I've got to say thank you so much for sticking with me. That's it for me. I'm Cameron. Have a nice day.